I'll pull over.
Hello, we're gonna give it a second for people to filter in. I believe we have some board members in the attendees side, no?
No, get back in.
Not yet.
Yes. So we're not at home yet, right? Thank you.
There were two and they disappeared, so we'll keep an eye on the.
Do we have quorum?
There's Amy. We have 6 folks right now.
Okay, there's,
Here we go.
okay, we have 7.
Yeah, you need to, I can't promote the panelists.
Okay.
Go down over dorsal, over to the right,
To
the 3 dots. Promote to panelists, and then for Christina, put allow. No, just click on Christina, allowed to talk.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, now that we've got all the appropriate people in, yeah? We do. All right.
Okay.
How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the Continuum of Care board meeting. I just want to make sure that we have our other co-chair on the call and he can speak and all that, just really.
Yes. Sorry, I
All right.
missed the test session. I'm here.
No, that's okay. I was just making sure that that I wasn't alone today. So, did you want to get it started or was it? I should get it started. Okay, today's, November 5th, 2025, and this is the Continuum of Care board meeting. We're gonna go ahead and get started with our theory of change. Reading that.
I got you.
All right, thanks, Jaja.
My name,
Oh,
wait.
yeah, no, you're right. You got it.
okay, my name is Jaja Floyd, and I'll be reading the Theory of Change. If we create a homelessness response system that centers people with lived experience of homelessness, then we will be able to respond to needs and eliminate inequities in order to end homelessness for all.
Thank you for that. And then, did you want to do the land acknowledgement as well? Can we put that on the screen?
Amy has it.
Or Amy has it? Okay.
Yep.
She has it.
I
Go ahead,
do.
Amy.
Hi, Amy Thomas here. Thank you so much. Land acknowledgement. The King County Continuum of Care Board acknowledges that we work on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, especially the First Peoples of Seattle, the Duwamish people, the original stewards of the land, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed action, and is the first step in honoring the land that we today sit on and their peoples.
Dorothy, did, you want to handle the roll call and approval?
Catherine, if you would please call the roll.
I will. Dr. Sam,
Good afternoon. Patricia is present, Seattle Continuum of Care Board member.
thank you. Tamara Bellman,
Here.
Jaja Floyd,
Here.
Amaya Lenore, Elizabeth Mopin,
Here.
Dorsal Plants,
Here.
Ruby Tuesday Romero,
Here.
Martha Sasarosi,
Here.
Christina Sawicki,
Here.
and Victor Liu is not going to be able to join us. Amy Thomas,
Here,
you have 9 members present. You have met quorum.
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome everybody. So happy to have you here. Motion would be in order. We've got a full agenda, so we'll keep things moving. A motion would be in order to adopt the, it was October, what month are we even in? The October meeting minutes.
This is Christina. I move that we adopt the October meeting minutes. Dr.
Motion.
Sam seconds.
We have a motion by Christina, a second by Dr. Sam. We'll just do a voice vote if everyone is comfortable with that. If you could come off mute if you're voting to pass the minutes by saying aye or yes.
Aye.
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 If you could come off of mute and say no or nay if you are voting against the adoption of the minutes. All right. And if you would like to abstain, if you could come off mute. All right, the minutes have been adopted and I will turn it over to Co-Chair Ruby for public comment.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. We had a little mix up there for the beginning of the meeting, so I wanted to make sure I did the appropriate thing there and handed it over. We're going to bring us into the public comment portion of our meeting. And I was just going to check if we had any submitted questions. Catherine?
No, we did not.
Okay, and I don't see anybody here in the room to make public comment, but if you are in Zoom and wanted to do so, please go ahead and raise your hand now and we will call on you in the order we received.
Currently no hands.
Currently no hands, yep, okay. Just gonna ask a second time. Third time. Okay, I think public comment is good to be closed. And of course, you can always submit a comment to the coc.questions@kcrha.org. And the Q&A, always Q&A, we are always looking at the Q&A, so thank you so much. The next one is gonna be, well, we're a little ahead of schedule here,
Yeah.
so we might not be ready to. Oh, Kelly is on the call. Hello, Kelly. Are you ready to take us into your update for today? All right, thank you. So take it away, Dr. Kinnison.
Thank you, Chair Romero. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to focus today on giving you some budget updates, both for KCRHA and our local funders. Many of you hopefully saw the news last week that because of our administrative budget shortfall, KCRHA did implement layoffs. The budget shortfall stems from kind of historically low administrative funding, which is at about 5 to 9% at a very high rate for us. And that's well below the 10 to 15% that most public sector organizations need to function with a high level of accountability and the amount of funds that we process. We also lost some COVID-related funding, and as you all know, the complexity of the environment we're in, especially with federal changes, just is increasing. So we have addressed this shortfall by very early in 2025, implementing a hiring freeze. We hired very few staff over 2025 once we realized that we had some of these operational complexities. We have held professional development, travel, any sort of nice to have things very, very low. We did cut 15 vacant positions that were in our budget for this year for 2026, and then laid off 13 current staff, including members from our executive team, down to some administrative positions that we created in anticipation of a sort of different funding environment. So that was, of course, very difficult. I know many of you are associated with organizations that are going through the same thing or something similar, and you know how difficult it is to lose these folks simply because of budget reasons. And we are trying to do this with as much humanity and care as possible, but it's never easy. As I said, we did really think about the structure of KCRHA and what the community needs from us right now. And we know that provider support is our #1 priority. So eliminating vacant positions without affecting providers was really our key goal. Just streamlining our structure, making it less top heavy, and focusing in on organizational essentials. So what do we need to operate? What do we need to support providers and execute our work that is not COC funded? We know we'll have reduced capacity internally. Again, we don't think that will directly affect providers, but we know we're putting our staff at risk of burnout and may slow things down. We'll continue to take feedback and try to adjust how we're transitioning our organizational structure into 2026 as we see how this all plays out. We are hiring a couple of, I think it's 5 vacancies that were existing positions that were vacant. People have retired and moved on, and so those 5 positions will be filled. And so that is the way that we're kind of making the new structure work. Is we definitely need those folks. So those will be on our website and are on our website. Moving on to city and county budgets, as many of you know, Executive Braddock's King County proposed budget would use $3 million of general fund to help support shelters. The general fund would also provide $2.6 million to nonprofits that are losing federal funding for homelessness prevention, shelters, and transitional and supportive housing. The council is currently deliberating. I think we're expecting some information to be public tomorrow, and their final budget will be released later this month. And excuse me, on the city side, Mayor Harrell's 2026 proposed budget includes $9.35 million to sustain continuum of care investments in shelter and housing. We've seen on the council, Dan Strauss releasing a balancing package that includes 2 council amendments aimed at protecting investments that are currently funded by the federal government. One is $9 million to backfill potential cuts in shelter and emergency housing, and another that HSD used $7.8 million to sustain existing homelessness services and permanent supportive housing projects before funding any new shelter beds. There's also an initiative on the ballot, the Seattle Shield initiative, that would add about $81 million to annual revenue that would in part be slated for funding emergency shelters. Haven't seen how that's faring. Maybe someone can tell me. So that is sort of what's in play right now in the budget. I know it's a really concerning time, and we are watching every move at the councils, at the state level, at the federal level, and appreciate your partnership in working through how we keep our homelessness response system intact in 2026. I know you all have heard a lot about sort of how we're managing continuum of care, so happy to take questions on that, but I'm assuming folks have, since there's no new information, that you sort of have the latest information, but happy to go there if that's helpful. I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. I do have a question in the room.
Yeah, Kelly, the continuum of care, we know it's like, I want to, for lack of better words, frozen, right? It hasn't dropped yet for us. So is the money that we already have allocated to us sustaining us so far? Is that what's happening? And then that 2025, if it dropped, it would sustain us through 2026. Is that what that is? Is that how that works?
That's right, Jaja.
Okay.
And we
Thank
didn't
you.
think we would have to reapply for 2025 funds, as you
Oh, you do?
yeah, as you know, they did it. They finally went to the 2-year cycle for 2024-25 and under the Biden administration, and then HUD under the Trump administration walked that back and just, let us know they were going to drop this new NOFO at some time and we'd have to apply for 2025 funds to take us into 2026. And so that's, as you said, what we're all waiting on.
Thank you. I did not know that information. This is Jaja once again.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's our job to know.
Right. Well, yeah, I know Kelsey really keeps us informed about that, right? She's really up to date, but I just didn't quite get the clarity that I just got. I mean, it's not that she didn't give it to me, I just needed to hear it. I think that's how I act. I mean, That's how I receive information is, I guess, when people
It's
talk.
very complex,
Bounce it
especially if you
off.
start looking at other federal changes. I hear you.
Seattle Shield Initiative definitely gonna pass. It's
Oh.
not official yet, but yeah.
The Seattle what?
So the 81 million that she was just talking about in annual revenue for the city, part of it will go to backfilling where the federal government has pulled back on homelessness funding.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's one of the activities, not all of the money would go to.
Thanks for sharing that.
Is there any other question? I see Dorsal's hand.
And Elizabeth, I love chat.
Thanks for me. And so Kelly, and I'm sure you're answering this in a lot of different spaces right now, but I was just curious, are there things that we as a board or that the membership as a whole could be doing, you know, in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months to really just kind of wrap KCRHA staff and support and just maintaining the momentum and commitment to a regional approach to ending the homelessness crisis?
Thank you so much for asking that. I think it's even, you know, as we all know, so important that we stay focused on, you know, the regional approach. And I think as we have new elected leaders, would love your help onboarding them, letting them hear your voices, letting them know, you know, we've come a long way, we have a long way to go, but you know, we know that this is how we make progress in this region, and it's collaboration and working together. And you know, you all are always, you know, kind to our employees, but just I think knowing that it's a hard time for the sector and our community and all of us, and they're, you know, going through this time right now. And so, you know, we appreciate your grace and also just the clarity of hey, I, you know there's a lot going on, but if you need something from us, you know, just follow up so we don't let our mission falter while we're all kind of adjusting during this time. And I think, you know, our team's been through a lot of changes, as you know. And so unfortunately, not necessarily new. And I'm hoping that we've, you know, learned a lot about how to go through these times together and in, you know, trauma informed and in just humane ways. And I know we're never gonna, you know, we're not getting it perfect. So just I really appreciate that sentiment, Chair.
Yeah, that's really important to remember that we're all kind of just humans in this world operating. So we also have one more question. I think I see Elizabeth's hand.
Yes, I actually have two questions, but the first one is we have a convening coming up very shortly where we get in touch with our whole continuum. And what things might we be looking for from the continuum to help during this particular time? And the second question is, are there things that we as a board could take on that our staff has been taking care of so as to lighten the load on you?
Thank you so much. Yeah, one of the things I'm really excited, this will be my first time in person at the convening. And so really excited about that. I think I was headed to one that got canceled when I first started. And so look forward to seeing you all in person, those who can attend. I think, you know, what I'm hearing from you, you know, you as a board, the co-chairs in particular, you know, have really impressed upon me just the need to work together and be in, you know, a lot of touch about how we're moving forward in this environment. I think our staff really want that too. You know, they want to be in community with you, with providers, with our unhoused neighbors, right? We can shape how our funders and elected officials see this problem and how communities see this problem and react to it. And I think we have this just great moment in time with the election. KCRHA, depending on how things shake out, could have 2/3 of a new governing board in January. And so, you know, we don't want to miss that opportunity to bring our collective voice to them, and to, you know, bring provider voice to them and show them like, this is how we need to move forward. You know, we're looking for your leadership and your decisions to support those values and those needs in the system. And so, you know, KCRHA has a lot to do to set the stage for that. The Continuum has a huge role in shaping that narrative, and you know, taking that message back. So we're really looking forward to you know, the next couple of months, like honing that collaboration and that message, so that right in January, as we're like onboarding new leaders, onboarding new board members, talking about how we're going to move forward in a different federal funding environment and with our new city and county budgets, that we all, you know, are just increasingly kind of rowing that boat in the same direction, and working together. Because as you all know, we're so much more powerful together, and finding out those areas of overlap and taking action. I think we need a lot of action for 2026 to make it through.
That's very true. It's an exciting and interesting time, definitely. Are there any other questions for Kelly? If not, I have one singular question. Was just wondering, so mentioning that there's going to be a little bit more investment coming from the city and the county side. It sounds like we're learning more about that as it goes. The thing you mentioned about the city of Seattle said potentially, or was like backing some of the COC programs that might be cut, was what you were saying. And does that funding process look different than how a NOFO is, or how are we going to be kind of addressing that as we have in the past, or how is it being incorporated with the NOFO process, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think at this point, with the amount of information we have, I'm not entirely sure. My sense is that if these pass by city council and are part of the budget, that then there's a process internally at the city to kind of decide, you know, how much of the funds are, you know, going to which departments. And then, you know, often our homelessness system funding is flowing human services department. So how much of that, you know, they're going to handle directly, how much of that's going to come to KCRHA. I assume if it's backfilling federal funding, you know, it very much could come through KCRHA. Sometimes they do things differently. So, and council, after they've approved that, those funds, right, have a real interest in how the city administration decides to use them. And so there's sort of this ongoing conversation as the budget dust settles and folks really start making those decisions. And so I think we can just, you know, stay in tune with how that's going and speak up for how we would like to see that go. And, you know, the clearer we can be on our priorities, and how those funds, you know, are going to be needed, especially once we see the NOFO, I think the more help that is to the decision makers about how much we, you know, I think this is a really problematic moment because we know we're in trouble, but we haven't seen the NOFO. We haven't actually lost money yet. And so the like very tangible thing of we're going to have to close X shelter, we're going to have to close X building isn't here yet. And there are other places where that is happening because of lack of federal funding. And so, right, you would, if you're a decision maker, you kind of start there. And I think, you know, I think we're continuing to think about like, how do we let folks know, like, we don't have a dollar amount and we can't tell you which, you know, projects may need to close, but there's very little doubt that we're going to take some kind of impact from this, if not this year, then the year after. And so how do we start to create some urgency and do some strategic work around that, without the information that we would all really like to have about exactly what's in the NOFO and exactly what decisions, you know, HUD will make once they receive our application and things like that.
Thanks for the The stark reminder there that we're still waiting on the NOFO.
Still waiting on the no.
Say, Grace.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's, unless I'm missing anyone, is there any other questions? I don't see any in the room here. But we really appreciate you coming, and I'm excited to see or hear that you're gonna be at the convening. We look forward to being in person with you there at Bellevue. Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate the
Thank
update.
you. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you. See you soon. Okay. Dorsal, I believe I handed over to you.
Yes, as we transition, it's a good reminder of something I wrote down to say at the beginning of the meeting and then forgot. But one of the things that Ruby and I just wanted to briefly comment about at the beginning of the meeting that we'll throw in here is you'll notice that the timing with our agendas the last couple of months has been a little bit, shall we say, wonky. But as kind of Dr. Kinnison was alluding to, and as our next agenda item we'll dive into a little bit more, we want to save room for essential items on the agenda, but because of the federal uncertainty, this historically being the longest government shutdown in our country's history, we need to leave these items on the agenda, and we don't want to overpack the agenda in case something comes up, but it may mean that you all get more time at the end of the meeting because we didn't fill the full 2 hours. And so we're open to feedback if there are ways that you feel we can more effectively use the time, but we just want to call out that we need to save space on the agenda for these important items, but sometimes, unfortunately, with the current circumstance, the item might not, it might need a huge update 3 weeks out, and then as you get closer to the meeting, suddenly it's less and less of an update. And kind of with that segue, I will turn it over to our wonderful Kelsey, who has been championing the NOFO for longer than I remember, with what I'm sure will be an amazing update with the government being shut down and all of the craziness. Kelsey.
Thank you. I'm just gonna pull up my slides and note that the title is from a meeting we had earlier with our COC grantees. So want to share what we've shared with our grantees and sub-grantees on what we are speculating to see with the NOFO and pieces that we want to ensure all of you are aware of as what we anticipate coming, whether or not there is a NOFO for FY25, whether or not there was just a renewal for FY25. Either way, we do anticipate some of these things happening at very minimum once we have the renewal for FY26. So I want to cover a little bit about what we know, our current portfolio, and potential change impacts that we may see if what we are hearing at the national level comes into fruition, as well as steps that we are taking to prepare for what may be ahead. So what we know, our current portfolio of COC funding is $65.4 million. This is not inclusive of the COC planning grant. That gets us to the 67 million. We know that there are currently discussions around potential funding caps and certain allocations to project types. As reported by Politico and the National Alliance on Ending Homelessness, there is discussion of capping every COC spending on permanent housing to 30% of your total award. And permanent housing, as it's being framed, is inclusive of both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. There is also proposals that we are, have decent reason to think may come to fruition, that there may additionally be designations that 1/3 of your funding would go to transitional housing and another 1/3 would go to shelter or supportive services. Should we see these allocations be put into the NOFO, that would pretty dramatically affect the funding that we receive in our COC. It would also have pretty dramatic effects on COCs across the country.
Yes.
Our COC, as you can see from the chart above, is very strongly, 85% is permanent housing. That's that dark blue section. So this is a potential loss of $23 million that goes to permanent supportive housing and 13 million that goes to rapid rehousing. Elizabeth, I do see your hand. I'm gonna finish the slides and then I'll take questions at the end. Some of the language that we expect to see in the NOFO is informed by what we saw in the COC NOFO builds application that was issued and reissued about 3 times. And the final issuance of the COC builds NOFO required some fairly controversial attestations, including cooperating with federal immigration enforcement and attesting that governments do not deny the sex binary of humans. So these are things that we are also anticipating would potentially be incorporated into the language of a NOFO, whether that is for FY25 or FY26. Wanting to share again our current portfolio by program type, noting that $42.8 million goes to permanent supportive housing and 12.8 million goes to rapid rehousing. Again, those are the 2 projects that are considered permanent housing as defined by HUD. We have another 4.5 million in joint component projects. These are projects that are a combination of transitional housing and rapid rehousing. At this moment, it's unknown whether joint component projects would be considered in a possible 30% cap for permanent housing projects. So part of our kind of contingency planning will incorporate it, joint components, yes, being a part of the cap, and no, want to make sure that there are scenarios accounting for both. We then see, again, the remaining projects, conditional housing, safe haven, support services only, and then our coordinated entry system and our HMIS also receive COC funding. This is a comparison of what our current funding by program type looks like. And if there are these 30% caps, what the realignment of funding and reallocation of funding may look like. So it's a fairly significant realignment in terms of what types of projects COC funds would go to support. The 10% that is kind of unknown, this is my projection, is that it would be funds going toward HMIS and coordinated entry, as those are required systems for us to operate homeless services. So kind of moving with some assumptions that that's how that final 10% would likely end up being allocated. A cap on permanent housing puts a number of projects, a decent amount of funding at risk. Our current total for permanent housing, this is inclusive of both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, is $55.7 million. A cap of 30% of our entire portfolio. So this is 30% of that $65.6 million is $19.6 million. That would be the total amount we can allocate to permanent housing projects. We currently are $36 million over that cap. We are not the only COC that experiences this. Two other COCs in Washington, 100% of their projects are permanent housing. And this is similar for likely majority of COCs. A lot of COCs, it's permanent housing that is being funded. So there's a couple of things that we have been engaging in and working on to do so. But some of the key takeaways that I want you all to be able to really hold is for funding wise, permanent housing is currently 85% of our total portfolio. And to reduce and meet a 30% cap for permanent housing would mean reducing about $36 million away from permanent housing projects. Some of the impacts that we could see should there be that reduction that leads to potentially fewer permanent supportive housing or fewer rapid rehousing dollars, is that it may really impact the number of permanent supportive housing units we have available in our system that are our long-term supports. It may also really impact the number of rapid rehousing households that we can support. So some of the throughput to rapid rehousing may be less, which would really see some ripple effects where we may see fewer exits to permanent housing in our full system because we may have fewer options that are available to people in our community. This may also impact our system performance metrics. We may see a decrease in housing stability that is reached, which is those exits to permanent housing or maintenance of permanent housing. And it could also increase our returns to homelessness because we are not seeing folks exiting to permanent housing programs. So some things that we want to be monitoring for as we navigate kind of all of these different changes. This is a big kind of dump of information. Some of which is heavy. It's a lot. And want to recognize that this is a lot. But there are also actions that we are taking to prepare. That includes reviewing all of the executive orders to align some of the language that we're using to describe existing COC projects. This is to just really make sure we are presenting strong, clear projects to maintain the amount of funding we currently receive and have as little money disappear from our community as possible. We are also working to identify projects that are currently receiving local funding that could be swapped for COC funding. So for example, we are looking at outreach projects or transitional housing projects that currently exist that are funded by the city or the county or Washington State Commerce, and seeing if that project is funded with $100,000 of local dollars, can we apply for $100,000 of COC dollars for that transitional housing project and take that $100,000 on that transitional housing project and apply it to a rapid rehousing project that may lose $100,000. So we are analyzing the amount of projects and money that is potentially available to swap local dollars for federal dollars. There is a risk in that we have to apply for those projects as new projects in the NOFO. And it would be contingent upon those projects being funded by HUD. To strengthen this, though, we are evaluating what those projects may be for competitiveness in the NOFO. So wanting to put forward projects that kind of align in what they are doing, what type of project it is, to kind of fit what HUD is looking to fund. So those transitional housing projects, street outreach projects, what do we have in existence? Again, wanting to kind of reiterate something Kelly said earlier, especially around some of the legislation we're seeing at city council and county council levels, of ensuring that there is funding to maintain existing projects before looking at something brand new. So really wanting to be thoughtful around how can we kind of rearrange some of our puzzle pieces, but make sure it's the same size puzzle, that we're not losing pieces in kind of that evaluation. The kind of overarching goals are preserving maximum resources for our region, locally, federally, state level, and also wanting to make sure that we are protecting existing brick and mortar and permanent supportive housing investments that have been developed over years of public funding. The reason we are doing this is that these are programs, these are projects, these are places where some people have lived for 15, 20, 25 years. So we are wanting to be really thoughtful around the potential disruption of the loss of federal dollars to buildings where there are long tenures of residents. So there's a number of factors that we are taking into consideration and planning, and kind of as those things are developed, will be part of, you know, any rating and ranking that is done with the NOFO will be brought to you all for review and consideration, so that we make thoughtful, informed decisions that maintain as many dollars as possible in our community. There will be some hard decisions that we need to make, and some complicated decisions, but wanting to make sure that we have as much careful thought and review around how and why those are made. So we have a very clear why that we can share around where we land. That is what I have for you. You all have these. They've been shared with you all. They're also online. And Elizabeth, I know you have a question. You are on mute, Elizabeth.
I know I'm on mute. It's just something always pops up right over that thing, so I can't get to it. What I'm wondering is, rapid rehousing is transitional. Is there any way of restructuring our rapid rehousing so that it appears to be transitional housing? Because we have more money for transitional housing, but we won't have it for rapid rehousing.
Yeah, that is one of the kind of strategies that we've identified, is looking at how can we reconfigure or reframe certain projects to meet the kind of scope and definition that HUD is looking at. So that is definitely something that is under consideration to look at. The piece that we also need to be considering is if there's a 30% cap on transitional housing, it's going to limit what that might look like. Right now, we only have about $6 million towards transitional housing. So we just have to look at what are our final numbers and amounts regarding if we can do this for all of our rapid rehousing projects. Do we want to do this for all of our rapid rehousing projects? But you know, we have to be thoughtful around what we're doing and thinking about.
And I understand if you don't have permanent supportive housing for people to transition into, that poses difficulties.
I see Dorsal and then we have one in the room. Dorsal, go ahead.
And I apologize, I'm just a little bit confused. So some of this stems from money in 2025 that hypothetically has already been awarded and counted for, or is the lost funds new funding?
So nothing is new funding. So we are currently operating in fiscal year 24 dollars. Any fiscal year 25 dollars begin in February of 2026 for some projects. And then kind of, we have projects waterfalling throughout 26, some that start in 27. That's fiscal year 25. None of that has been contracted. That's what the NOFO would be. So we're talking about money that potentially begins February 26, again, through January 27. That's the unknown.
Okay.
Funds that we have now that started February of 25 through January of 26. We have all of those agreements. Those are signed, executed. We are able to access those dollars. So we are not talking about currently available funding. We are talking about the funds that would start in that new time period. That's the fiscal year 25. They're always dedicated before you can start using it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jaja, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was, on the slide, I needed clarity. So under if the new, you know what I'm saying, that 30% and all that cap and all the language stuff. So does that language say we can't house immigrants or binary? Is that what it's gonna say, that those folks are not able to have housing?
What the NOFO builds language said was that in order to apply for funding, you have to attest that your organization, your agency, for one of them, your community, shoot, I'm losing the word, will work with federal immigration enforcement.
Oh, will work.
And that you do not recognize beyond the sex binary.
Okay.
Discriminate. This is
There are
Amy
federal
Thomas.
laws that are still in place, and federal laws around discrimination. There's also a lawsuit regarding the COC builds NOFO. So one of the pieces that we are doing is just carefully following executive orders, legal cases, to keep up to date as best as possible with what we may see.
Thank you.
Thanks. Martha, I see your hand.
Thanks. Yeah, I think just two add-ons. And thank you, Kelsey, for walking us through all of that. Because I just wanted to name that there are so many considerations and like parameters and things to be balancing as looking at like the full landscape. Because even something like a shift of a program from rapid rehousing to transitional housing, there's considerations of rapid rehousing, that household would have a lease directly for the unit. That is not the case in transitional housing. And so it is a difference in program setup and what rights to tenancy households have. And so there's a lot of implications to work through, and we're going to be as creative as we can be as a continuum to retain as many federal resources as possible. So just appreciate that there's a lot to navigate here in addition to in the umbrella of this like uncertainty. And then I just, like another example, I think that came up in the COC builds was that projects had to be in jurisdictions where things like camping bans were enforced and other forms of criminalizing homelessness. And so there was quite a list of, objectionable doesn't do, but like unconstitutional requirements. And so that there's also the component of like legally, in addition to that, our values, like legally navigating what can be done. And then actually, sorry, other piece just to name is that with the FY24 funds, those are tied to an injunction that we have in our active court case. And so honestly, with all the focus on FY25, I know I haven't followed up, but just a question that comes to mind is with the shutdown and that affecting courts, what that's doing to the timeline for the court case for the FY24 funds. And maybe in the future, we can have an update on how that timeline's affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I have a quick question. We were talking about percentages of how much is going to be potentially restricted for us to spend in different areas. You had mentioned that hopefully there will be some HMIS funding in there for that last 10% or something alongside coordinated entry. Do we know how much percentage we are spending currently of our funding on HMIS? I know that is maybe not something that we have you do?
It's about 1%.
1%. Okay, so in theory, if that is a restriction, then we're still covered under that. Okay. Granted, if we get the same amount of money, right? Okay, cool. My other thing is, we still have the ability to set local metrics, correct? So, or hopefully, unless they change that dramatically. Okay, we'll see. That's just something I wanted to put on our radar, I guess, is what I was thinking about. And then, the last thing, is just, wanted to remind, that like the word binary means two, and there's factually more than two, like combinations of sex chromosomes in the human body, right? And so that's just factually, I just wanted to point that one, definition out, that binary means literally two and it's incorrect. So, thank you. That's my last thing there.
I will state that the next, who knows how long, is gonna be complicated. And, it will take a lot of focus and care and thought and thinking about what are priorities for the board, for the committees, to be thinking really strategically around how do we maintain dollars here? How are we supporting projects that are in existence? And being very laser focused on, we need to make sure that the folks that we have in housing right now maintain and stay in housing. That is a huge priority.
Absolutely. And I think it's gonna be very interesting to navigate, and I'm hopeful. I heard something that Kelly said earlier today. We're hopeful of maybe in our local region of what's to come. So we can just really lock into that, stay positive, and know that we're here doing this work for a reason, and that is right now. Like, this is why we need to be advocates right now, and really holding to our known best practices. I believe that we've all been in this realm long enough to understand some of those things. So thank you for that update.
Can I ask one final question?
Oh, yes, please. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
And I apologize, this one might be slightly unfair, but the worrier in me. February seems like it's really far away, but it's actually not, counting in holidays and congressional actions. Sorry to put you on the spot, but do you know what would happen if this hasn't been decided by February? Like, will the funds come in February, or like what happens if we don't know by February?
So first want to caveat this with, in a typical year, we usually don't have HUD funds contracted by February. They usually start probably in May. And I'm on my screen looking at Martha because King County holds the grants that start February, April. So one, that is not an atypical experience. If we don't know anything by February, I would speculate, again, this is speculation, that we would have done our due diligence and coordination with our other fund partners and local fund sources, other funding to provide some reserve or backfill dollars or kind of hold steady funding in the interim if we don't know anything by then. Whether or not that would be something that would be project by project on the timelines that they begin, or, you know, the whole 67 million. I would surmise project by project, or, you know, a set of projects. Yeah, that's best I can speculate at this moment in time.
Thank you.
Well, is there any other, I think, Dorsal, I think it's still you facilitating this portion.
Oh,
I can take over if you want, but.
well, I believe we are to the break portion of the meeting. We are ahead, but we're only ahead by 4 minutes. We have a 5-minute break scheduled. I have 2:56 on my clock here. Let's ask everyone to be back by 3:02. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
All right, and we'll see you all at 3:02. Enjoy your 5-minute break.
All right,
We're back, we're so,
Mhm.
we're almost back. We still
almost
have
back.
1 minute to let people trickle in, and if you guys could come on to camera so we can see that you're
We're
muted.
muted.
Huh?
We're still muted.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Are we
No,
muted?
we're not.
No,
Oh,
you're
not
not
muted.
muted.
Pardon me.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks, Chris.
We were just making sure that we weren't muted, and Christina, thank you for confirming that we weren't. But I see a bunch of happy faces there on the screen, so we're gonna wait for John to get back in this. Or 3:02. Okay, it's 3:02. We'll get started. Thank you for that short break there. The next segment on our agenda is going to be the board and committee updates. So we're kind of doing a repositioning there, like we're coming back to the COC, less about the organization, less about the federal aspects, kind of bringing it back to locally, and wanted to start out with there's let's see, we're gonna do all of these were gonna be Victor, right?
No, cross-cutting policy. What
Yeah,
was
other than
this?
that one though. Yeah, okay. So the cross-cutting policy work group, I'm just gonna start out the updates today. We had our meeting on the 20th of October, and there we were talking about some of the adjustments that we had, some of the feedback that we had received on the written standards, some of the updates to the actual document that we are making through the departments and other what's the word, participation from departments in KCRHA. And so we're gonna be reviewing those at our next, like really engaging with those and reviewing those at our next meeting. We're gonna do that November 24th, I believe is the 24th.
Correct.
And yeah, but we've also gone over the rapid rehousing updates that we're gonna go further in depth with Jeff. We've been being pretty vigilant on those updates, so. But the cross-cutting policy work group is just kind of, like I said last time, getting that reboot started, and we've had some new staff members that have joined and some new members that have joined as well. So we're really engaging with the written standards and intend to have a more finished project for the COC to look at after the convening. We're gonna get some feedback there, I believe. And so please engage with the written standards for our entire COC there at the convening. Now I believe I turned it over to Dorsal for the co-chair updates, and we also have updates from Victor, who's not present.
I have the charter one on his behalf.
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna do the charter one?
Happy to.
Awesome. So as far as co-chair update goes, we are still working on kind of the cadence and rhythm of the meeting, trying to balance capacity challenges with just the need to meet. So that's why we're still canceling agenda meetings when we've got the agenda set. So just keep your eyes open for that. Although we're trying to balance that with keeping a space available for board members who can just pop in with questions, so that not everything is being asked and balanced in front of an audience of hundreds. Some of what we worked on in the last couple of weeks of the co-chair meeting included just following up on the parking lot questions. Get a lot of really good questions from the community and from the public. And there's just not a lot of time in some of the meetings that we have to get them answered in the meeting, or it would be better to wait and have a stronger answer after the meeting with a little bit of thought put in the answer and some resources shared with it. So just working to ensure that those questions and answers get widely shared or kind of widely advertised, so that people benefit from the answers that people get when they ask their questions. And I think that's we'll be moving into planning the retreat for December. Catherine was kind enough to get us a location already. So we have a location. It'll be offsite for us to just be able to come together. The hope will be to have it everyone as in person as possible. And we are still wanting to utilize the board members as part of the retreat. So if there's aspects that you would like to bring to the retreat, trainings, information, group sharing, or just forms of team building and collaboration, please let Ruby, Catherine, Kelsey, and myself know so that we can include them. But largely the next few co-chair meetings will start to transition into kind of that retreat planning. But I think that's everything unless Ruby, you have anything? Yep.
Yeah, just quickly wanted to remind everyone that the board retreat is actually going to be in place of the December COC meeting. I believe it's on the same day. So it's the first Wednesday of the month. We'll get more information to you as soon as possible, but just wanted to remind everyone that we are taking technically a board meeting break and just doing a retreat instead for December to try to be in community with everyone. So thanks, that's all I wanted to add. Oh yeah, do we have any questions?
Well, no, I'm a little late for the recap, but I was wondering if not hybrid.
Is it hybrid? Oh, or the convening?
Yeah, the
meeting?
convening.
Oh, we haven't got there.
Okay, got you.
All right, cool. So we're gonna go ahead and why not go into the convening update if there's a convening work group update. Who is giving the convening update? Would that be you, Catherine?
Dorsal has the convening update from Victor.
Or I thought it was the charter thing, or.
It's
Oh,
Victor provided both.
okay. I have the too many C words with somebody with a traumatic brain injury. 1 second, let me pull that up because I had it and it was like.
Well, while you're pulling that up, let the record show that Patricia's back.
I got it. Thank you.
So while you're looking for that, would you like me to do the charter review update?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So the charter revision work group met twice in October, the 17th and the 20th. The work group members reviewed the charter revision framework and findings from a membership survey that was put out for public comment. That closed on the 19th of September, so they reviewed that in October. We're aiming to complete the work in the first quarter of 2026, and shifting from having a presentation of the charter at the convening to having a special meeting in 2026 to focus specifically on the charter. So we'll hold a special meeting of the COC membership then to review and discuss ahead of asking the membership to do a final vote. The next meeting of the work group is on November 21st. So that will be in 2 weeks' time. I'd also love to give a little update on the YAB. It wasn't on there, but we do have a little bit of an update that I would love to just share with everyone.
Yes, please.
And bummed that Amaya is not able to be in this meeting today. So over the last probably 4 months, we've seen a fairly significant drop in engagement with the YAB. So continued YAB members, we are kind of rebuilding the foundation and really working on recruitment materials. So we'll be putting together kind of more detailed information around both what is the YAB, what is it to be a YAB member, as well as an onboarding kind of packet similar to what we have for the COC board. So we'll be doing that in fairly close collaboration with the kind of current remaining YAB members. That's going to be the aim through the end of the year, with a goal of kind of putting out and bolstering up recruitment in the early 26. Kind of some of the main feedback we had was that a lot of folks just didn't really understand the focus or the purpose. So really wanting to ensure before we bring new folks in, that we have the materials and preparation so that young people kind of wanting to lend their voices and lend their hearts to this work have a really solid foundation. So that's something that both myself and Catherine will be supporting the YAB on doing. And really excited to kind of put in some new energy into this as we bring in more young voices from King County to really support. So thanks for letting me give that update to you all.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do see Amy's hand. I want to make sure that you're able to ask your question, Amy.
Thanks. It does have to do with the YAB, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask you, Kelsey, or wait until Amaya is available next time, but I really am just interested in how long has the YAB been established? And then making sure that, you know, we keep in mind, like, I know that when I work on marketing and doing different things in the type of work that I do, that I really have to think about generational advertising and marketing. And so if we're talking about, hey, we want to put something together similar that we did for the board, I feel like the things that were put together for the board were pretty high level. And I'm not saying that young people aren't intelligent. That's not what it is. It's that we need the grab, right? We need the excitement. We need them to want to be in a place that doesn't feel like school or work, right? Where they're really being a part of the community. So I'm just interested in kind of some more on that. And again, because Maya's not here, I'm okay to, like, you know, put a pin in it, but that's where my brain goes when we talk about that. So thank you so much for the information.
Yep, absolutely. It might be a really a great note to do a little bit more of an in-depth sharing at another board meeting. And absolutely agree with you, Amy, and the points you raised. Part of why we really want to make sure that this is not something that we are doing without the YAB and without those members, that it's really anchored in them.
Awesome. Martha, I see your hand as well.
Yes, I just wanted to throw out there that I assume we're the Office of Homeless Youth at the state level has done a lot of work to build up their youth action board. And so thinking both in terms of like a peer-to-peer, connecting our YAB to that YAB, but then also just like, you know, what work did the Office of Homeless Youth do to like really structurally support their YAB to see the kind of like engagement that at least like, historically I've seen from them in some like state convenings.
Thank you. That's a good piece of information. Dorsal, I believe, unless there's any other questions on the YAB, it would be back to you for the charter or the convening update.
Yes, the convening, which is not the charter, and I have that ready. And just a huge shout out to Victor, who couldn't make it, but was gracious enough to prepare reports for us to read. It's a really nice, I love when my job's super easy, so thank you, Victor. So update on the convening. The convening work group conducted a site visit at Bellevue College and found that the venue had limited capacity and only one microphone per room, which required high staffing and technical support costs to manage multiple hybrid rooms. So Bellevue College is preparing a proposal, and the costs seems to be a major concern. Based on these findings, it is just not practical to hold a hybrid convening at the location that was chosen. This was, from Victor's report, it was a group discussion and a group decision. And the group really just decided that if we can't do hybrid well, it would be better to have everyone in person and do a quality convening versus swimming upstream. So as always, we want to keep convening as inclusive as possible, but the practical realities on the ground with the site visit just did not allow for that, and the convening made the best decision that they could make there. But that is what I have from Victor. I can't really answer questions beyond that, but Victor is going to be back in the office, so you can shoot him some email with questions if you have them.
This is Christina. There's other people on here that are also part of the convening work group if there were questions.
Yeah, good point, Christina. Thank you.
Yeah,
Are there
thank
any
you.
questions for the convening work group? I don't see any, but I just was wanted to highlight that Victor was pretty surprised to hear that it was going to be only in person. So I'm sure he did his due diligence on checking that out, you know. So hopefully we'll be more hybrid in the future, but that's unfortunate. But that's okay. I'm excited to be in person with you guys, so.
We do have 115 RSVPs, so I think
That's a
people
lot.
are really excited to come.
That's great.
Yeah.
Patricia, I see your hand.
Hi, this is Patricia. So this is for our convening. I'm just asking a clarifying question. This is for the 18th convening in Bellevue. So you were speaking regarding the virtual, but it's still in person happening at this vineyard, this location. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yep, still happening November 18th at Bellevue College. Knock on wood for thunderstorms.
Thank you.
Don't even think it. I see in the chat there. Yes, exactly. All right, and then I think that would be all of our updates. Now it's about 2 minutes after 3:15, but I believe we have Jeff on the call to give us an update on the rapid rehousing standards.
That is right, and I
Jeff
can
Sims?
try to go quickly if that's helpful for you all too. So my name is Jeff Sims. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Chief Program Officer at KCRHA. Thanks for letting me join you again to keep you abreast of what's happening with the Rapid Rehousing Program standards. We've had another series of meetings. At this point, I imagine the board members all kind of get the sense that we have both a monthly meeting with providers that are operating rapid rehousing, and then just about a week after that, a meeting that would be with the cross-cutting policy work group. We're using both of those venues to obtain input from the community overall to make sure that we're responsive to input and how programs actually operate, what would work, what wouldn't, things like that. We largely still have all the standards in place, except for how we would approach the rental subsidy. Based off of feedback from the last time, well, I guess it would be technically 2 ago now, but our most recent round of meetings brought 2 proposals to the group that was responsive to earlier feedback. That was really wanting to have things that were more defined in terms of like set tiers that would make things more easier to anticipate. Not too dissimilar from what we do right now, where the existing model for rapid rehousing is you get a month of 100% subsidy, and then the next month is, I forget the percentages, 70% subsidy, 30% of your income goes, sorry, the next month is 30% of your income goes towards rent. Then it's 40% of whatever your income is goes towards your rent, so on and so forth to 6 months. So that very clear expectations for providers and participants. We brought 2 models to the groups. One was an income-based model that is conceptually similar to what is currently the reality of how we operate rapid rehousing, but extended over a longer period of time. So most likely we would start off that with a household in a 12-month plan that would have three months of 100% subsidy. You're not paying rent at all. Then 3 months where you're 30% of your household income, and so on and so forth, escalating over that period of time. And at any point in time in there, various steps could be taken to extend that duration, because we know that rapid rehousing can serve households for up to 2 years. Some households will require that, so having those steps. But it's really clearly based on the income of the household, what is documented, and every 3 months we're adjusting your subsidy level. That's what we would call our income-based model. And there were set tiers. The other model that we brought to the group was rent-based. This was something that paralleled largely with some approaches we looked at previously, where instead of it being X percentage of your income as a household will go towards rent, it was you as a household will be responsible for X percentage of whatever that rent amount is. And kind of regardless of what your income is, that's what you're responsible for. And again, it would have the same kind of approach that initially it'd be, nothing that you'd contribute, and then a little bit and a little bit more, moving you towards a long-term ramp off, essentially, where you're handling rent entirely by yourself, which is the point of a rapid rehousing program. After 2 years at maximum, the household is expected to cover their housing costs. That's the whole program. We had a really good discussion and engagement on both of those models, thinking things through. There's, with both of them, a significant concern is the amount of contribution the household is expected to make. So if it's on the rent side, if I'm saying you're going to pay 70% of the rent, no matter what your income is, that could be a burden if you don't have the money for that. That could exceed what your actual income is. At the same time, on the income-based side, if we're going to ramp you off over time, we might get to a point where I'm saying, 60% or 50% of your income needs to go towards your rental costs. That might become too burdensome, and a household might not be able to afford that. That's going to be the dynamic we're going to have to face, though, because remember, by the end of the program, the household is responsible for all of its housing costs. So that was the kind of feedback and engagement discussion about how we accommodate that, for example, where like the appropriate limits, like we shouldn't, set a cap of 90% of your income can go to rent, things like that. That was what we talked about. We also had a vote in the session that had provider agencies present, and it was exactly 50-50. Half the agencies really preferred an income-based model, half preferred a rent-based model. So we're doing a couple of things to, again, continue to build off this feedback. The one thing I want to note, though, is in the cross-cutting policy work group, I think there was substantial more preference for, not universal, but substantial more preference for that rent-based model. There are certain benefits that come from like the understanding for a household of what they're going to have to contribute. It supports financial planning in the long term, things like that. There are issues that could arise with some of our fund source requirements, things like that, that we have to consider there. So what are we doing for next steps? We're trying to evaluate those further, figure out what is feasible, take some of that input on like not overly burdening a household. Some participants in both of the meetings said, is there a way to combine these? Could we say you'll pay 30% of the rent, but not to exceed, 70% of your income, something along those lines. So there's a degree that we are exploring that. Other participants also said, could we have both? Could you just like let the program pick which one they'll operate? There could be, I don't think we could do that feasibly within a program. That'd be too complicated to document for a household and not have compliance issues. But if an entire project was operating in one way and a different project was entirely operating another, it might be feasible, but we're trying to review the confusion that would cause, and there could be issues that arise with then outside the control of a household. They might face, matched with a model that maybe they would not prefer as much. I think that's an important consideration. So we actually haven't finished all of that yet. Some of the work we're doing to answer some of those questions is pulling from, for example, from HMIS, what we know about household income when they exit the program, a rapid rehousing program now. So we can estimate what some of those limits are, what is realistic to expect, like how burdened for rent a household would be under each model versus what is a realistic progression, how many households could be served, things like that. So, and then also trying to develop, is there a hybrid that could have both? So that's the work we're doing at this time. And that's really the main question, that once we resolve that, we would expect to then move forward with the standards. Most everything else has gotten comments and has been reviewed and vetted for fund source requirements, things like that. We're really just trying to make sure that we have really gotten to consensus about the direction to go forward. Consensus might be a strong word because you're never going to please everybody. But to the degree possible, we really want to make sure we've incorporated what has been really helpful feedback from all parties involved. And we're really appreciative for that thoughtful engagement that we've gotten. And with that, I'll turn it over for questions. I know that was a lot to say.
Great, thank you for that. We've been getting pretty in-depth updates and it's really helpful to understand the whole scope of it. Are there any questions for Jeff on his updates today? I don't see any in the room here. And doesn't look like we have any hands raised, so it looks like you're off the hook pretty easy today, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right, Dorsal, I believe I handed over to you for this next segment.
Yes, but not entirely. We're gonna do this one together, I hope.
Yep.
And Catherine and Kelsey, I apologize, but part of my technical issue, would you be willing to share the slide? Thank you. Sorry about that. So we've got a little bit extra time, which will actually be good because we're hoping to have some time for discussion today. Although I also want to, put this placeholder out here too, that this is just the start of what will be multiple conversations. I think there's a lot of really good information that we gathered at the June convening, and it's a real opportunity for us to kind of look at and shape what our work plan next year will look like. And so that'll be some of the work that we'll also do at the December retreat that we were talking about. The other thing I just wanted to throw out before we got started too is we're doing June convening takeaways in the month of November, which it's, that seems like a lot of time, but as has been alluded to by Dr. Kinnison, by Kelsey, by others, there's just a lot of rapid changes between June and today, and there's limited capacity to respond. And so we want to assure everyone, the membership and the board members, that the convening takeaways were extremely important. It's not that they were deprioritized, and that's why we're bringing them today. It's just balancing the various needs of the agenda. But we needed to at least have this conversation before our next convening in November to kind of help us prepare for some of the breakout groups there. And so with that setting the stage, we'll go ahead and we will get started. There's a lot here, so we'll try not to move too quickly, but we really want to get to the discussion piece. So we got to move a little bit to get there. So yes, next slide. So just a little bit of context. As we all can feel, we have friends, we have family, we have loved ones, we have people we know. Our region is just in a critical juncture when it comes to the homelessness response. A real need to figure out what we're doing well, and what we can do to move forward as a community. And so community feedback was essential to that. It will be an essential piece of that. And it's partly important because it's identifying the persistent barriers. And there were some themes that we'll go over both in the good, but also in some of the challenges that we're seeing. And the good thing about the challenges I think we'll be discussing today is I don't think they'll take anyone by surprise. These are challenges I think we've all experienced in our own work here in the entire King County system. And so we know what the challenges are now, so we can really start to dive into what are our next steps, and really strengthening the system as a whole. Next slide, please. So there are a few guiding principles that really seem to kind of be the anchor points by which we can kind of think, not just board action, but membership action, kind of the COC as a whole. But there was a real need to foster a productive narrative to really break out and explain to the community and the public that there is a lot of really good work happening, that people's lives are changing, that families are moving towards stability in our community, and really owning the really positive work that the membership's doing, that KCRHA is doing, that everyone is doing to just make things better. There's still it's a multi-sector response, as Kelsey was alluding to with the NOFO, like there's multiple people we need to have in a room, cross-sector tables. We need to have ways to communicate. We have to have ways to talk and share information in a way that reaches and connects with each other. We also need to continue to undo structural racism, finding ways to ensure that our funding decisions continue to center the voices of people with living experience, continue to support and center the voices of those who have been disproportionately impacted by homelessness. And going on with that, amplifying those voices. We need to ensure that there's an opportunity for people who have experienced homelessness to not just be there at the beginning and the end of a conversation, but to be peppered throughout the conversation, and also be put in places to where they have the opportunity to develop not just into people helping the system, but people who are truly leading and driving the car. Reducing competition. There's not enough funding to go around. There's not enough resources to go around. To maximize resources, we have to do the one thing that seems so counterintuitive to all of us. We have to stop fighting over our piece of the pie, and we have to look at the pie as one whole piece. How can we enjoy this together? How can we maximize this together? And finding ways to reward collaboration, to support collaboration, because as you're seeing in the chat, there's no well-being in this work if we're not collaborating together. Competition breeds dissatisfaction, and yeah. And then finally, building an infrastructure. We want a system that is strongly put in place so that all of the providers are able to access the same information, speak the same language, so that when we have somebody who is in trauma coming to an organization, they are getting that same respectful care, that compassionate concern at every level that they're going. And it's just building an entire bubble of trust, and not just silos of trust to go from one space to the other. Next slide, please.
Really, can I just provide one little bit of context?
Yes.
So for those who may not remember, these are the guiding principles that Pathways to Housing brought that were part of the discussion at the convening in June. So the principles that you're seeing here are the principles that they identified in their research and work. And these are really how those principles they identified, how they're amplified in how we as a COC move and approach and are actionable for us as a COC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder, because we did those Post-it notes, we had the
Right.
things on the walls,
Thank you.
that we were writing our
I needed
different.
that.
So I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, thank you for bringing that to us. Okay.
And I'm seeing some love in the chat for the presentation, and it's a good time to shout out that Kelsey was an essential piece of this presentation as well. So I get to look fancy and good presenting it on camera. It would not have happened without Kelsey.
Yeah.
So some common themes across all feedback, and just one quick note on feedback. It can always be rough to get feedback, but feedback oftentimes comes from a good and a positive place. It's a desire to see improvement, to identify ways that work together. And so kind of in the spirit of what we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, like all of us can benefit from feedback because all of us have an opportunity to be better, to improve, especially when we're talking about a system. And we're talking about a system today. We're not talking about individuals or individual organizations. It's the system as a whole. But some common feedback. There's a need for better cross-sector work coordination and building trust. This is not unique to our COC. I attended a training today where they talked wholeheartedly about how trust is an essential component of any coordinated entry system, but it tends to be one of the resources that has to be worked to build up most completely. Workforce support. We still know that the people that are serving our community are one paycheck away from access, or one paycheck away from potentially needing to access those services. We have people that are providing services today that are hurting because the SNAP program has been shut down. And so as having lived experience as a service provider, when I am worried about whether or not I'm going to make rent, I am not doing a good job. I am not doing a good job. And so we need to empower our workforce to be able to do that good job by not worrying about their own families. Community voice. Authentic, ongoing, and compensated. The ongoing piece, I think, is incredibly important here. Compensated is incredibly important too. You don't have a plumber come to your home and fix anything in your home for free. So we should not expect people with lived and living experience to show up and fix our system for free either. But to be able to fix a system, it means it needs to be authentic, and we have to have your voice, not just at the beginning, not just at the end, but we have to have you participating the entire way, and not just in the room, but actually with a hand on the steering wheel. Equity. We still need to do more to embed anti-racist practice and representation into our work, especially now, especially when I am a empowered and privileged person, and for some reason, I'm nervous saying anti-racist. It's 2025. I shouldn't be nervous about saying that. This is still essential to our work, and it needs to be embedded in our work from start to finish. System identity. I know this is one that I have felt, and I know others have felt too, but who does what, when, and where? You know, that's one of the essential things about like the baseball teams that we were all just watching a few weeks ago. Won't say any names to bring back bad memories, but everyone on that team knows who they are and what they do, and that's what makes a team. And so understanding who KCRHA is, who the board is, who the governing board is, so we know who's on first and who's responsible for catching the ball when it goes in that direction. Not a baseball guy, so I probably ruined the narrative there. And then finally, but probably one of the most essential pieces I think for us to consider as we move into 2026 is we have to recapture the narrative. We have to explain to people who've not had the opportunity or the privilege to know someone who's experienced homelessness that this is not an individual failure, that our system needs to address the human-centered understanding of how the systems interplay in life and how one medical bill that comes unexpectedly, one ambulance bill unexpectedly, and suddenly you are in a homeless system that has a real rough time on your family. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that were identified as part of that feedback. So with roles and coordination, it's interesting. I am the co-chair of the COC board. I am proud and humbled to serve in that role. But if you put me in an elevator and told me I had 30 seconds to explain to a stranger what the COC board does, I would struggle. And that is a failure on my part. And part of what we need to do is understand who we are and what we do, and doing that together. Equity and voice. We have decisions disconnected from lived experience, but there is another component to this challenge that I think we all need to think about. Our board has a high percentage of lived and living experience. I would put our board's lived and living experience representation against, I'm a competitive person, against almost all of the COC boards in the entire United States. What can we do as leaders to make it clear to our membership and to the community we're serving that it is lived experience driving the car, that this board is made up of lived experience and is ready to lead? Provider infrastructure. We have disjointed tools, inconsistent training, training that can happen or doesn't happen, just various things that we can work on there. Funding systems. Again, it's that competition fatigue. It's the weirdest thing to be a provider. If you have yet to be a provider to apply for funding, it is mind-breaking to suddenly be against people that you are working to house people with, because I need that $10,000 more, because if I don't get that $10,000, I know what families aren't going to get served. And so how do we break this competition? How do we get out of this, dare I say, capitalistic mindset when it comes to deciding who gets money? Urgency. You all know I love bureaucracy, but the truth about bureaucracy is that it is slow and it is not human-centered. It can't be by definition in a lot of ways. What can we do? You know, the fire alarm of the housing crisis has been going on for at least a decade. How can we continue to remember that this is in fact a crisis? The house is still on fire. We have to move quickly. We have to do something now. And then lastly, but again, I think essentially is that narrative piece. You know, people are getting housed. People are bettering themselves and people are receiving assistance. How do we challenge that information? And also, how do we remind people that that person sleeping on the sidewalk is a person? It's a human being who has the right to life that all of us do. I think with that, I can turn it over to Ruby.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dorsal, really setting the table there. I'm gonna start out with it's good to know that my food analogies are making it into your parts of these speeches now. But I also wanted to say that, this is a really important conversation. As Dorsal said, we have heard a lot of this before, and it's really about the recommendations and possible actions that we can do now. We can actually start to talk about what needs to happen. So go ahead into that. So the first, this is the possibilities that we can do within the scope of the COC, things that that Kelsey has identified and we identified as a membership that we can do. So the system coordination and governance, as we spoke about, clarifying roles, convening partners, and managing work groups. That means, empowering the membership to participate in our work groups and committees. And with our charter coming out soon, we should have more understanding, clarity about what the roles are. And then the funding alignment, we can reform RFPs, which are the requests for proposals, for various aspects of our system, but that incentivize the collaboration with those organizations. So what does that mean? That means giving them an opportunity to participate, something that's meaningful for them and a positive for them as well as a positive for us. Embed equity metrics. We've been speaking a lot about making sure that we are equitable and, as Tamara's mentioned before, the well-being metrics are really important for that aspect, and just kind of like evaluating our system as a whole, and embedding what we want to see into the RFPs, into the various other funding aspects of the system. For performance and data, the evaluation of outcomes, and the governance the evaluation of outcomes, governance, and well-being through multiple lenses. So just really evaluating everything through those multiple lenses and creating feedback loops to get information back to us so we can correct anything or refine something if needed. Then redefining success metrics. I think that, there's, I was mentioning earlier with the system performance metrics and things like that, there's going to be some changes in how we're measuring programs, but we can still evaluate how we want to evaluate here on our own local level. But that'll take, partnerships, of course. Bringing on to the community engagement and also workforce development. I kind of see these two things kind of coming hand in hand because a lot of our community is the workforce. But meaningful inclusion of people with living and lived experience, as Dorsal was speaking towards, making sure that the onboarding is standardized, that the trainings are accessible for anyone at any time. Maybe that's we'll talk about actual solutions here coming up, but maybe there's a repository of trainings that people can access, different forms of accessing those trainings. And trying to make sure they're interactive. That's one thing that I see in a lot of the readings that we do and a lot of trainings that I have been a part of. It's not as interactive as maybe it could be for people engaging in this, in these conversations. But the standardized onboarding is going to be super important. And that also kind of leads into the public education. Great job on the sequencing there. I felt like it was really, really good. But the public education of storytelling, media partnerships, humanizing homelessness comes from having a standardized understanding of what that base level is and kind of coming together, convening to discuss what should be, we're all going to have different opinions on how to end something, how to make something better, which programs should be funded. And it's important to hear those voices, but it's also important to come to a decision at some point. And so just like knowing all those decisions that need to be made, communicating that to our community will help that public education really unfold. They'll start to ask, I've seen it currently, they're asking a lot more questions, communities asking more questions, looking into different aspects of homelessness that is encouraging to see the involvement there from our community. So we got to continue on that. System responsiveness, what does that mean? So the possibilities of strengthening our responsiveness to barriers, to various, like the federal funding instance for right now. This is a great crash course in adaptability. And being responsive, responsive to extenuating circumstances. One thing I always try to think about is you can't, for what you can't control, you gotta just let it go. I know that's not the right way of saying it. I don't remember the actual limerick there or whatever it is, but
Limerick.
I don't know what it is, some sort of something or other, a phrase of words together, a haiku, we'll call it a haiku. You knew what I meant though, so I appreciate the last bit. But yeah, so that's kind of just like what is in our scope. If we want to go to the next slide, this is what's not so much in our lane, however, is partially possible to engage on these conversations. So out of our, this is outside of our direct authority, which is like housing construction or operation, rent control, market regulation, land use, zoning changes. then it goes into the system side, mental health system reform, or wage setting for providers, eviction moratoria, emergency orders, landlord regulation or enforcement. Now, these are all very important aspects of the homelessness services system, but these are not things that we have direct line with. So that's why, as the one of the 4 purposes of the Continuum of Care program is to convene other sectors alongside our providers in order to have a more cohesive system. So the limitations on our scope of work really depend on our relationships with other departments. We can have influence in many different ways by speaking to specific instances of, not specific legislation, of course, but we want to be speaking towards specific issues that we see within our system that we could easily mend by having a partnership. So that means we can buy into regionalism in different ways. Yes, of course, the people who are in charge of the purse strings are definitely going to want to see some monetary investment there. I think that on the side of the continuum, we can understand the desire for more funding. However, I can see both sides of the argument. And I believe that in the context of the COC, we are laying the land for more meaningful participation, in-kind services, knowledge sharing and adaptability, and like on our approaches to homelessness regionally is also being part of the regional approach. And so just like to what extent can we engage on all levels and call it regionalism? Because I think that we need to come together in our belief systems, I guess you could say, or just at least openly discussing them. Of course, that's my own words speaking there. So, so don't, and the last thing I wanted to say is on the bottom of the slide here, you see COC can advocate, convene and align data, but cannot implement alone. And I love that. Like none of us can implement anything alone. We need community. Next slide, please. So these are actions already underway. I'm not going to read all of them, but I did want to touch just on a couple on each little thing. So system coordination and governance, we are looking at our charter being revised and work groups reviewed for effectiveness. And that just means the baseline of how we run them. Funding alignment, we are increasing access to COC funds. They did the how to apply guide, which I really like to see those things popping up in my algorithm. Yes, I do have those in my algorithm. And then performance and data, really discussing how we're communicating, right? So we've been doing the dashboards that are live and improving on the KCRHA website under the system performance tab, and the research and data team updating the metrics in real time. That's been super helpful for us to be more responsive to everything going on and communicate that to people. The community engagement, there's been more representation of lived and living experience on our committees and work groups and participation in the continuum of care period. And the stipend policy has been updated, and there's been 5-year plan focus groups involving those communities. Workforce development, the training series, again, I'll stress that there's new trainings on the KCRHA YouTube. Are they on the website as well? Just links to them possibly.
I think there may be the links. So most of them that have happened have been live and in person.
Okay.
Where the coordinated entry one is a new monthly series that will happen on a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis. That's good for a monthly thing.
Yeah, it's good for something to be monthly when it's monthly.
Yes.
We have upcoming 2 in-person trainings. One is on low barrier housing access and assertive engagement. That's been advertised in our provider newsletter and online. And then we will be sending out information for a second trauma-informed care training. We held one back in the summer. And there will be another one live as well. We've been talking about getting things recorded and online. The aim has been for the in-person ones, as that's been really the big call from providers recently. So more to come for 26 development.
That's great. Yeah. Like to hear the in-person. I think it's really good work to work together in a room. Of course, we know that. So the next section that we're talking about is the public education. And I just want to be clear, we're not talking about like public schools. Like we were talking about the education of the constituency, the public, the story collection. So it sounds like there's some progress on what kind of stories we're collecting and being able to engage with the community on those. I'm excited to see those. And the updates that we're getting from KCRHA are more consistent, more in-depth. So there's a lot more communication going on there. Makes it easier for me to answer a question for something that I may not otherwise know. Other things we're doing in the system, responsiveness, the pilot from coordinated entry is in progress. And then there's been enhanced service matching training. And the only thing in bold, I shall say, is that we are a nationally recognized severe weather response. So that's great. Those are the actions already underway. I'm sure there's a lot more, but this is what we could fit on the slide. Go to the next one. So examples of next steps. These are things that we can do that we're working towards in the future. And once we get the charter revised, we're gonna be able to distribute that information. Who is doing what, when, where, how, and why. We've also got the collaboration metrics in the NOFO. I think we can go more in depth on that later. But those are kind of like where we've been discussing what kind of things we're gonna embed in our system. And enhancing partnerships with affordable housing providers, and funders. Again, enhancing partnerships is always a good thing, especially in different districts that we can't make, any official decisions on. Community engagement and lived experience, we're gonna be launching, pilot to feedback channels. So there's gonna be more panels, sounds like, and we're gonna be working towards, implementing effective surveys to get feedback from the community. Workforce development, the plan to evaluate 2025 training series to inform regional trainings for 2026. Great. And that also leads into curating and publishing the story bank that we were just discussing, and also the other information that is coming from the trainings and things like that, or I mean, the surveys and things like that. Then the convening of multi-sector leadership roundtable. Ooh. These are examples. These are examples, guys. I'm getting too in the weeds with it. These are all things I would love to see come into fruition, and I think are all things that are very important to strengthen our system. Next slide. Sorry, I'm kind of flying through these last ones. I apologize for that. So how do we interpret this feedback? We got a bunch of community feedback. What do we do with it? So we don't want to take it as criticism. We want to look at it as a direction. I think that's something I've learned how to do over the years, is we got to like take what people are saying and hear that there's concern there, and what can we do to help them feel more heard, and change what we can. The themes are interconnected. So like all of the things that were coming to the surface here, we're speaking towards clarity, coordination, and equity reinforcement for one another. And then the public perception does matter. So we need to be making sure that the narrative is, communicated, and that progress is also communicated as well. Because sometimes we forget to celebrate ourselves and what we've done. Sustainability requires infrastructure. So workforce data and shared governance are foundational. And again, that leans back again on the convening and collaboration with all of our other sectors and departments. So just really like observing how all this works together, how this can change it for the better. Next, please. So we've kind of already gone over a lot of this. I don't want to spend too much time on repeating myself, because I do want to get to some of the discussion portion. But if we want to go to the next slide. Here's the long-term vision. Again, these are all things that we've been pretty, am I missing anything on this one in particular? I don't think so, but it is important to say that the narrative should be centered on dignity and shared responsibility. I think that's important. All right. So in closing and in discussion, and I apologize for breezing through those last two slides, but we were repeating ourselves a lot there. So what additional clarity or communication tools are most needed? How can we strengthen collaboration without duplicating effort? And that, talk to each other, for instance. Where do we need joint advocacy outside of COC control? What's the best sequencing of near-term versus long-term actions? And of course, we're not going to have answers to these immediately, but please feel free if anybody has any input in the last few minutes. We can touch back at this at the convening and at our retreat. So I'll turn it over to board if you guys, Elizabeth.
Sure. I'm wondering, what can we do to bring in voices that are outside of those who are receiving direct benefits either from HUD or from KCRHA? Because there are a lot of people working on homelessness issues that are not in those two categories. And if we're going to strengthen collaboration and not duplicate effort, we need to know who they are and hear their voices.
Yes, that's a great point. Is there any other feedback? I wrote that one down. I think that this is a really big conversation, so, please review these questions and the discussion guidance for our convening, for our retreat. Kelly said earlier, major changes coming, potentially at the governing board level. There's opportunities here. Dorsal, thank you.
And I think too, just want to throw out one, there are still members of the public with us, and this is a system conversation. And so if you're a member of the public and you had thoughts or feedback as well, feel free to write it either in the Q&A or to email Catherine or Kelsey or myself or Ruby or the board as a whole. I think one of the things that will be wonderful if, and I'm a processor, so I needed to chew on some of the material here myself. But as we think about next year, there were a couple of items that when Ruby and I were going through, I was seeing a lot of hearts or a lot of energy in the chat. And so as we think about what we want to do as a board, next year, I think some of the question for us to think about at our December, I don't want to give a date when I say it, at our December 3rd retreat, is what are a couple of the things that we really want to lean into for next year, and what are the ways that we can support. I saw a lot of energy around the narrative change, and we have some trusted network resources from our lived and living experience, I think, that can help with that. Elizabeth, I think your question is a great question, but I think one of the things for us is, as leaders of the COC on the board, is what can we do to start connecting the KCRHA staff with those people that we know of. I'm thinking of one person I know who, she's not even an organization, but she's probably done more for some of the South King County residents in the last couple of months than I did in a year of being a professional paid staff person. And so how can I connect that with the right person at KCRHA, which brings us back to that who's on first piece. But my real hope is that we'll be able to come up with some concrete things from this list. One of the things in here that really speaks to me, I've heard it from the membership. I know it's something that I put down on my own results, but increasing the infrastructure, having a membership site, a one-stop place so that at the very least, where to go if you want to collaborate. And I think it's just one thing to call out, but I've talked a lot. We're running out of time, so I'm going to stop and see if there's any other thoughts or closing conclusions.
Well, don't all speak at once.
Save it for the retreat.
We'll save it for the retreat, and, always feel free to email if you have anything that pops into your brain at 3 a.m. like I do. Go ahead, Dorsal.
I was just going to say, before we close out, we've got like less than a minute left, but I did just want to open up the floor for good of the order announcements. If there were board members here who wanted to share any updates or anything like that before we close out.
Hi, this is Amy Thomas. I know that we're short on time, but I got to go to a conference for the meeting of the Seven Nations tribes in Washington State. They also had a summit this year, and the governor signed on to recognize Indigenous people. It was very heartwarming, eye-opening. It was a great networking event. There were mostly Medicaid and DSHs because we're trying to figure out how we can help with housing in the tribal situations. But it was really just a brilliant educational reminder of the plight of the man and how we can join together. And it was just really powerful. So I just kind of wanted to share that it was an awesome experience, and I didn't realize that these summits were out here, but I'm really trying to get more connected with the community. It was held in Centralia, wherever Great Wolf Lodge is. And so it was there, but it was a great meeting place. Unfortunately, we don't know that we're going to do it again because of funding. And so I think that that's a chronic thing. But there was a governor's proclamation. If you guys are subscribed to his newsletters, it was super powerful that while we were at the summit, that he had signed this proclamation, and it just was like awesome. And it was really cool to watch a video about the Longhouse and the history of the Longhouse at Evergreen College. And I remember being a younger person in my life when that was going on, and didn't realize how impactful it was. So it was just really brilliant, really beautiful. And we're really looking at geriatric care for tribal folks and how these lesser money tribes can plug into Medicaid and the DSHS systems and the different intricacies. So I was able to really learn. Yes, I see you, Elizabeth. I got you, sister. And so that's my jam. So yeah, and I started a new job. I actually have a housing navigation company. And so we started that here in August. And we're building our network right now. So it's very exciting. And so I'm looking forward to working with folks. Thank you so much. It's really awesome and really powerful. So appreciate you giving me more than a minute to talk. So pardon me for making anyone late. Thank you.
No,
so
you're
much.
good.
We do have,
Thank you for sharing
thank
that,
you
Amy.
for that, Amy. We have one other hand up, and that'll be our last announcement. Always feel free to share opportunities over email. Martha, please go ahead.
Thanks, and congratulations, Amy. Thanks for sharing out too. I just want to share some personal news that also affects my ability to attend COC board meetings. So I'm going to be starting a planned family leave later this month, early December, as we welcome another kid to the family. And so I've just been in touch recently with Ruby and Dorsal to sort out what that will mean for this like funder seat on the board while I'm out, and planning to come back in mid-May. And I can also send something in writing so the full board is informed, but just wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Martha.
Congratulations.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Congratulations, Amy, and congratulations, Martha. This is amazing. What amazing news. That last thing, and I don't mean to like take up too much time, but like I have officially launched my business, Wellbeing Revolution. And so like maybe we could partner up and do some business / social justice oriented work. Let's do it. But what a great month so far. Except for some of, like general stuff. Awesome. Congratulations all around.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm a real dork when I get excited.
We all are. It's okay.
We love you.
Embrace
Tamara.
it. Yes, embrace it. All right. Well, with that, those are all good things to end on. Just a reminder, we're not gonna have a board meeting. We will do a retreat on the same day, December 3rd. We'll see more information on that later. Thank you, guys.